Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome. So we've got Marlene and Chris in the room at the minute. Welcome, morning, everyone. Welcome to another Social Hub session. It's Thursday, the 10th of June. 10th of June. Wow, already. Yeah, welcome back, everyone. It's really good to have you all with us again for another Social Hub session. We're really excited to have the team from Guide Dogs UK with us this morning, and they're going to be talking all about the charity, about tech, about mobility, training, services. Yeah, and we're really pleased that they've been able to join us, so thank you. And as always, you have me, Sam from Sight and Sound. We've got Stuart Beveridge from Seascape up in Fife, and we've also got Stuart Lawler with us from Sight and Sound Technology as well.
Morning, everybody.
Yeah, morning. We'll do our formal introductions in a second. We'll wait for a few more people to arrive, hopefully. But good, yeah. So a few parish notices, as always. If you're new to these sessions, thank you for joining us. Very informal Social Hub session. We'd love to hear from you, and we'd love you to get involved as much as you can. So if you'd like to get involved, leave your thoughts, comments, observations, ask any questions, share your experiences, then please do. And you can do that in a few different ways. You can use the chat box if you're using a screen reader. You can use Alt and H if you're using a Windows machine, Command and H if you're using a Mac. And you can also raise your virtual hand as well, and you can actually voice and ask Emma, Grant and ourselves any questions, Alt and Y or Command and Y as well. So please do get involved. We'd love to hear from you, as always. Good. So yeah, numbers are leveling off, which is good. So welcome, good morning, everyone. Yeah, and also any regulars that have also joined us again. It's great to see, as always, familiar names. So yeah, introductions. So we've got Emma, we've got Grant. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Hi, good, thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for having us, guys. I'm really well, thanks.
Yeah, excellent. No, it's good. I'm really pleased that you're here, that you could join us. We've got Emma Brown, and you're up in Ayrshire, aren't you, Emma? That's right.
Yep.
Yeah, good. And yeah, so Emma's the Services and Marketing Officer for Guide Dogs. And we've got Grant, and you're Edinburgh, is that right, Grant? Yeah.
West of, yeah, near enough.
Great. Okay, and we've got Grant, who's one of the habilitation specialists for Guide Dogs. And Stuart Beveridge, obviously, from Seascape up in Fife. How are you, Stuart? You well?
Yeah, not too bad at all. I'm here with my guide dog, who I always say is the best guide dog in the world. He's beside me.
Good.
And yeah, really looking forward to the presentation and the chat today. And the weather, we usually do a weather report at the start. The weather up here in Fife has improved significantly this week. It's boiling up here in Lochgelly at the moment. So
yeah, same down here in Hull.
Yeah.
I'm over in East Yorkshire, and it's red hot. So I was just explaining to Emma and Grant, as a bald man, I'm trying to stay indoors at all times at the moment. So it's very warm down on the East Coast. Good. And yeah, Stuart, and your guide dog, remind us of your guide dog's name again, Stuart?
His name's Ron, R-O-N.
That's the one.
So he's yeah, as I said, he's 9 now. So he's my second guide dog, and I know you shouldn't compare them. It took us a while after the first one. I did not think I would get any better than my first guide dog, but this one's my soulmate. So anyway, I'm pathetic. I'm going to stop talking now. So
Stuart, I'm getting all choked up here. I mean, that's amazing. Ron is a bit of a celebrity. We have seen Ron at the Social Hub a few times before.
Yes.
When you've graced us with your camera on. But,
yes, and it was the Envision glasses.
It was.
He ran through to appear on the Envision glasses and tried to lick my face. So that was I had to take them off.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll catch more of Ron at some point. Good. And then also we obviously have Stuart Lawler with us as well from Sight and Sound over in Dublin. How are you, Stuart Lawler?
Sam, good morning. I'm good, thank you. Just to keep on the thread of the how's the weather type question. It's very humid in Dublin. We don't have sun yet. We had lots of sun yesterday, so we're hoping for more today. But great to be back at the Social Hub. I haven't been able to attend the last couple of sessions, but lovely to be back and see everyone. I'm really going to excited to hear the presentation today from Emma and Ron. So thanks a million.
Well, make sure you stay hydrated, Stuart. Yeah, plenty of Guinness. You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
You said it, Sam. Thank you.
Excellent. Good. Well, that's us. That's the team for you today, everyone. But what we'd love, obviously, as we have a strong guide dog theme today, we'd love to hear from you about your guide dogs, about or your clients, students, or anybody that you work with, service users, anybody that you interact with that you has a guide dog that's benefited from the charity and their services. Please do share your experiences with us. Any guide dog related photos, images, anything, selfies. Put them in the chat box if that's possible. I don't know if it is, but anyway, we'll see. Good. So let's crack on. We're going to have a sort of a mini presentation, I think, from the guide dogs team. Kirsty's already using the facilities. Wear a baseball cap, Sam. Thanks, Kirsty. Noted. And Jane has already said hello. Good morning to everybody. So yeah, we're going to hand over to the guys from Guide Dogs, and I'll let you guys talk to us all about obviously the charity, the history, I'm sure, and your exciting services. And yeah, we'd love to know what's to come as well. So over to you guys.
Brilliant. Well, yeah, thanks again for having us today. I'm going to start off just to tell you a wee bit about our charity, about guide dogs and the services that we provide, and then I'll hand you over to Grant, who can tell you a lot more about our tech side and how we're using tech within the organisation. So you can view me as the warm-up act, and then Grant will get to the good stuff later that I know you're all here for. So the charity guide dogs, the services we provide, we're going to chat a bit about mobility training as well, and then on to our technology and a wee bit of time for Q&A at the end. But like Sam was saying, if you can pop any questions in the chat as we're going, we can pull them into the conversation. So guide dogs, so who are we and why do we exist? So excitingly, we are celebrating our 90th birthday as a charity this year, which is really exciting. And over the 90 years that we've been in existence, we've really developed our services to provide a much wider range of services and to be able to help a much wider group of people. So we work with adults with sight loss, we work with children and families, we work with friends as well, friends and families. And it's a whole range of services that include the dogs, which is the obvious one, but also a lot of non-dog services as well, which I think are much lesser known, but just as important and just as beneficial. So I'm looking forward to sharing those with you today if you're not as familiar with them. But just a big shout out to the general public and our supporters who help fund us. Without donations, we wouldn't be able to provide the services that we do. So big thanks if anyone here is a supporter of Guide Dogs. And also a really big thank you to our volunteers as well. So we've got around 14,000 volunteers across the UK, and they volunteer in a range of roles. So we've got volunteers that work with the dogs, so the puppy raisers that look after the puppies, fosterers that look after the dogs later on in their training. We've got sighted guide volunteers that help people get out and about, and our fundraisers that will go and host events, and that's just a small selection of the volunteers. So we're really lucky to be so well supported. So I'll chat to you a wee bit about the services we offer. I'd be really interested to hear any questions or thoughts you have in the chat. I can't actually see the chat, so somebody can chip in if anything pops up. So
yeah, I'll let you know.
Brilliant, thanks, Sam. We've got a new guideline information line. So rather than somebody phoning up and saying, I would like a guide dog, and kind of automatically proceeding with that route, we're very much looking at the person as a whole and taking into consideration where the person's at just now, where they want to be in the future, and discussing our range of services and what might be the best way to get the person to where they want to be. And it might be that they use one of our services now and then they move on to another of our services. So it's a much more holistic and kind of whole person and whole life approach. And that's kind of starts at a central point through our phone line. and we can chat about how guide dogs can support the person, but also if there's any other organisations out there that might have more specialist services that the person's looking for, we can signpost them or refer towards them as well. So our services for adults with sight loss, so I'm sure the first one's not a surprise when you see guide dogs on the list of our services. So it's obviously the service we started with 90 years ago, when we started with 4 guide dogs in Liverpool. So our guide dog service, the guide dogs are there to help anyone with sight loss get out and about. So they're a mobility aid. To apply for a guide dog, our kind of eligibility criteria, people don't need to be completely blind to apply for a guide dog. So a lot of our guide dog owners are partially sighted and have some residual vision. There's also no age limits for our guide dog service. I think that can be a surprise. We sometimes think people don't apply because they think they're too young or they think they're too old. And actually we've got quite a wide range of age ranges that have guide dogs. I think our youngest guide dog owner in the UK is 14 just now, and our oldest guide dog owner is 97. So a huge range, and obviously it's a case of finding the right dog for the person. As long as a person, as they get older, as long as they feel fit enough to be using the guide dog and getting the dog out and about, then we can assess them for a guide dog. People also don't need to be registered blind or partially sighted to apply. So a lot of people think they'd be excluded because they aren't registered. But as long as someone's got a visual impairment and feels like a guide dog will help them get out and about, then we can assess them. So I'll come back on to guide dogs later. But I just wanted to also tell you about companion dogs, which is a much newer service, and I'm sure one that not many of you have heard about yet. So companion dogs, really, as it says in the name, they're to provide companionship and really just a sort of canine friend for someone with sight loss. So they're not a guide dog, they're not a registered assistance dog, so they don't provide any help with getting out and about and guiding. But they do have all the nice benefits that you get from a dog. The enjoyment of having them around, the kind of incentive to get out and about and get some exercise as well. So these companion dogs are a nice way for our organisation to use the dogs, which we've put a lot of time and effort into training, and which our volunteers have put a lot of time and effort into as well, but maybe for one reason or another just aren't at the standard that we'd be looking for them to be a qualified guide dog. So a nice well-behaved pet dog there to provide companionship for people with sight loss. So our other main service for adults with sight loss is non-dog, so moving away from the dogs, and it's called My Sighted Guide. And it's volunteers who we would recruit, and we would teach how to guide someone with sight loss. We'd do their background checks and keep in touch with them. And then we match them up with somebody with sight loss. And the idea is to help the person get out and about a bit more and do things that they enjoy doing. So ideally, we'd like to match the volunteer and the person based on their interests, so that they both enjoy whatever activity it is. If it's someone that likes going to the theatre, that both the volunteer and our customer kind of benefit from it as well. So really, really nice service. And obviously they get a bit more conversation out the My Guide volunteer than they might get from their guide. Our newer service that we've been able to launch over lockdown and over COVID is our friends and family training. That's something we've been able to do virtually, so we've been using Zoom for that. And it's sighted guiding training aimed at friends and family of people with sight loss. So it's maybe for somebody's husband or somebody's friend or their auntie who they like to go out with regularly, but the person maybe just wants a wee bit of hints and tips on how best to guide or how best to support someone. So it's an hour and a half session available over Zoom, and they're running kind of in local areas around the country just now. So if that is something that would benefit anyone, then feel free to get in touch with us towards the end. But it's been really nice to be able to do that over Zoom. We previously would have done face-to-face sighted guiding training, and I suppose there's pros and cons to both. So with the face-to-face, obviously you get the practical practice, whereas with virtual we don't, but we are able to reach a much wider group of people virtually. We can reach people that are much further away from our offices, for example, that wouldn't have made that journey to us to do the training. So it's a nice way for us to be able to to reach people with that. So as well as our adult services, and pleased to have Grant here, who's one of our habilitation specialists, so please do chip in, Grant, where you feel appropriate. So just to tell you a wee bit about our children and young people services, and when we say children and young people, our age range that we're kind of working with is from birth right up to 25, so it's quite a big age range, and obviously different services might apply at different times in those age brackets. So we did mention earlier that there's no lower age limits for guide dogs, so anyone could apply for a guide dog. It would need to be the right thing for the person. So it's, as we were talking about that sort of person-centred approach, it would be looking at the child or the young person's lifestyle and whether a guide dog's the right thing for them. But the good news is if the guide dog's not quite right at that time, we've got a whole suite of other services that we can offer children with sight loss, which is great. So buddy dogs, the way we were chatting about companion dogs for adults, buddy dogs is our sort of similar service for children. So again, it's dogs that we've bred and we've trained, but haven't quite made it to become a guide dog, but we felt could have a benefit to a child with sight loss. So our buddy dogs are paired with a child with sight loss, and they're there to kind of promote confidence and try and get the child more interested in going out and about and physical activity. They provide good sort of good sensory stimulation if the child gets involved in grooming the dog and playing with the dog and all the different dog toys that you get to play with the dog. Also things like feeding the dog. The child could weigh out the food and use like the talking scales to tell them how much food they're putting in the bowl. So really just a nice way to kind of work on all these things without realising that you're working on them. And the buddy dog as well would have a nice impact on any siblings in the family and on parents too. So definitely something that we're keen to promote. And just to give you an idea, last year throughout lockdown we matched 52 buddy dog partnerships across the UK. So yeah, so moving on to our My Life skills. So this is our habilitation specialists like Grant, who would go out and work with children with sight loss and teaching them some independent living skills and mobility training. Grant, I don't know if you want to chip in here with the types of activities the types of things you'd be teaching the kids.
Yeah, happy to. Also, just to mention about buddy dogs, another also that benefit of learning routines and learning kind of life's daily activities for a dog helps the young person, but also that getting out, health and well-being, but also maybe socializing. And another benefit people may have found is if a young person is thinking about guide ownership as an adult, then having a dog, a well-trained dog in the house that might prepare you for that kind of lifestyle. Going on to habilitation, what's a bit of and also to explain the title, a habilitation specialist versus an adult, what we call a rehab worker. Mobility and specialist for adults is a rehab worker. So rehabilitation is relearning skills that you may have had when you had vision, whereas habilitation is when working with children and young people who usually haven't had sight or may have had sight very early on. So not always, but typically they're people who are young people who are learning those skills for the first time with visual impairment. And we can, as Emma mentioned, we work with from babies all the way up. So it's all of those developmental stages and all those activities that we want to ensure that children and young people are competing with their sighted peers, really, at the same age and stage activities, everything from crawling advice to early feeding skills to bathing, dressing activities, zips and buttons, getting around the house or school or nursery. That could be with or without a cane. Travel skills. We also work with all children and young people, even those with additional and complex needs. So that might be mobility skills in a wheelchair, support and advice for staff and families and carers. So everything and anything that will support those young people to be as independent as possible.
Brilliant. Thanks, Grant.
Right.
And I suppose our My Time to Play kind of fits nicely into that for our younger age group. So My Time to Play is an exciting new charitable offer we've launched recently, and it's for the really young kids. So that's our 0 to 4 age group. And currently it's running virtually, and we're hoping later in the year we'll be able to get out face to face, fingers crossed. So my time to play is sensory stories, sensory games, learning through play, and it's for the children and their parents to join. Siblings can come along as well to have fun there. Grant, I don't know if there's anything you want to chip in about my time to play.
Yeah, so I guess touching on the technology side, we mentioned also with buddy dogs, the early application stages and the early group sessions are also virtual. But with my time to play, you know, the plan always was to bring people together and those group activities, but not only because of the past 14 months, but also sometimes geographically up here in Scotland or in other parts of the UK, it's sometimes difficult for people to meet in person. So we've adopted that virtual approach early on so that people can come together and share. Parents can share kind of activities, but also stories, and be a support network, peer support for parents. But for those young children as well, it's about, you know, learning kind of body movements and understanding how your body moves and those early habilitation skills. But like you say, in a fun environment with songs and games, and it's been really, you know, it's been really successful, the early stages. And like Emma said, our plan is to get face to face, because obviously it's a more interactive experience when you're in a group with people. But you know, we've really found that that virtual approach has been a great start, actually. So I think we've piloted it in Scotland, in Wales, and in some part of England. That name escapes me. So yeah, it's going really well, and that's an offer that's going to be throughout the UK. So yeah, as Emma mentioned, if you want to get in touch, we've got guidelines. So any inquiries about that, it's just phone up and we can get that process started.
Yep, brilliant, thanks. Our technology and equipment offer for children and young people, I'm going to keep you on suspense about that until later when we get into the techie part of the chat. So we'll move on to that one later. But customized books, it's a really nice service, I think, for children and young people. And this is where we can tailor books to suit the child's individual requirements. So things like colour of paper or font size and the style of font and the spacing in between font. We can turn your standard book into one specially made for a child to suit their needs, and we would charge the same price, so the RRP price that the standard book would have on the back of it. There is about 4,000 books that we have kind of ready to go, but I think if a child wants a particular title that's not in our library, they could request that, and we can see if we can make it. It's a really nice, really personalised service, customised. We do offer family support and education support as well, and also our family events, which we've not been able to hold recently because of COVID and lockdown, but in the past, in Scotland, for example, we've gone to Blair Drummond Safari Park, and children with sight loss and their families and siblings have come along and had really nice days out where the staff have been able to, you know, like I went to one, they brought out like dead animal skins and all the cool stuff that kids love that other people might not. But yeah, really exciting day out, and just nice to get families together where they can chat to each other, but also chat to our staff that are there as well to get any other advice. So just moving on to our guide dog training and mobility part. So I just wanted to kind of give you a brief outline of, I guess, the journey of a guide dog and how it gets to the point where you see them out on the street working with someone with sight loss. So we do breed our own dogs. So I think we're the largest breeder in the world, largest breeder and trainer of dogs in the world. We've got our breeding centre down near Leamington Spa in England. So our dogs are bred, and then when they leave the mum, they go to one of our volunteer puppy raisers. And that volunteer does all the hard work with the puppy. You know, when they're chewing things and peeing on the carpet, and they've got a lot of patience to teach the puppy their basic obedience, take the puppy out and about to as many things as possible, really, to get them used to busy environments, to get them used to public transport, and all the things that puppy would be expected to do when it grows up and is working as a guide dog. So really, really fantastic role that the puppy raisers do for us there. And when the puppy, usually when it's about 14 months, it's then coming into one of our 4 regional centres that Grant mentioned. and that's when it's coming in to do its formal part of its training with our trainers. So it'll be learning to get the harness on, it'll be learning to go around obstacles, and start to do all the more serious parts of its training there. And while the dog's in training, it's also staying with another volunteer in the evenings and at weekends, and we call them fosterers. I think many of our centres, certainly are always on the lookout for volunteer fosterers. So if you know anyone that lives nearby, you can pop onto our website and see if it's available in their area. Nice to have a part-time dog in evenings and weekends if you're working through the day. So once the dog's done its formal part of its training, we're then looking to match the dog with one of our customers on our waiting list, so someone who's applied for a guide dog and been accepted, and we're looking to match them up. And it is very much a match, so it's not a case of next person on the waiting list gets the next dog. It's very, very specific, so we're looking at the types of activity the person does, if they work, what's their working day like, do we need a dog that'll quite happily sit quietly under the desk while the person's working. We maybe look at how much they use public transport and what types of transport. We would look at maybe like how fast the person walks, how big's their stride length, how would they handle the dog. So there's a whole range of things that our sort of specialist staff are looking at when they're thinking about, would this dog suit this person. But once that match is there, it's then a case of training the person with the dog. So we know we've trained the dog, we just need to teach the person how to get the best out of that dog, so that they can help them with their mobility. And that new partnership training takes about 5 weeks. And then at the end of that, when our guide dog mobility specialists are happy that everything's going well, then they would qualify that partnership, and that would be the person qualified with their guide dog and ready to be let loose in the world. So throughout the partnership, our instructors keep in touch, and if there's any issues along the way, we can provide support. And as the dog gets a bit older, they're starting to look at, well, what happens when the dog's hitting that sort of age about 9, when the dog's looking to retire. We would speak with the person to establish, kind of back to that person-centred approach that we did at the start. So what's next now? Does the person want to apply for another guide dog? Do they want to move on to one of our other services? And when the dog retires, there's maybe a few different options. So the person might choose to keep the dog if they're able to, because it is, I'm sure, Stuart, you would agree, that the bond that you build up with the dog, it must be hard at the end to see the dog go. So I know a lot of our guide dog owners would keep the dog if they can, but it's not always possible. And then if the family might nominate, if there's a family member or a friend that maybe helped out with the dog or knows the dog quite well, that's also another option for the dog to go there on retirement. Or even those volunteer puppy raisers that we talked about that had the dog maybe 8 years ago, they sometimes rehome the dogs as well, and failing that, the general public can apply to rehome a retired guide dog. So they'll never be short of a home. I think there's always somebody willing to take them in. So just a bit about what the guide dog actually does. You're probably aware of them and seen them out and about, but maybe not entirely sure how they actually help somebody, guide someone with sight loss. So the dogs are taught to walk in a straight line in the centre of the pavement, and they're going from one curb to another curb. And they're judging obstacles along the way. So any obstacles are static, like bins or like cafe seating areas, and also moving obstacles. So whether that's people coming towards them, prams, that sort of thing. So they're on the lookout for all these things, and they are guiding their owner around them and always trying to come back to the centre of the pavement. If there's an intersecting road, the dog should stop at the curb. So they're highlighting to the owner that they've come to a road there. And they would also highlight if there was any flights of stairs, for example, they would highlight that too. They've also been taught to find certain things. So you could say to the dog to find the door or find the seat, find pedestrian crossing. So quite handy, if you're on the bus, want to find the seat in a GP waiting area, need to find a spare seat, the dog can be helpful that way as well. I think there's maybe a few misconceptions from the general public about what they think the guide dog does. So the dog, for example, doesn't decide on the route that you're going. So if you're going to the butcher's, the dog doesn't automatically take you there. So it is really important that the guide dog owner has an awareness of their local area and the routes that they want to go. Otherwise, the dog would probably just take you where they want you to go every day. So you might end up in the park on a very regular basis rather than where you're trying to go. The other thing is road crossings as well. So while the dog does have an awareness of traffic, it is very much a team between the dog and the owner on deciding when it's safe to cross the road. So the guide dog owner does need to have an awareness of the traffic and judging traffic and deciding when they think it's safe to go. Stuart, I just wanted to invite you if you wanted to come in and chip in with anything. I know you've got Ron and have been through the training and using Ron on a regular basis. So it's just if there was anything you wanted to add.
No, I think you've covered pretty much everything. I think that the key thing, obviously, is that you're a team. You know, I was really glad that you covered that at the end, because, you know, as good as the dog is, I remember a story. My dad, I mean, I have no knowledge of Edinburgh at all, and my dad thought he could leave me in Edinburgh one day and expect me with Ron, you know, to get back to, well, it wasn't Ron, it was my first guide dog, but he thought the dog would actually know its way back to Lochgelly in Fife from Edinburgh. So there is a classic, you know, misconception of, you know, that they think the dogs, I mean, the dogs are really, really clever, but it's those myths around, you know, the dog's trained in a certain way. It's not, they're not super dog, are they? So, and I think that the key thing is, you know, it's getting that bond right from the very start. And I did find that the transition from my first guide dog to the second one, I'll be honest, I found it very, very difficult because I think it was because I hadn't faced it before. And, you know, my poor first guide dog had actually, you know, it had taken seriously ill unexpectedly, and then it was like relearning, because I just thought, oh yeah, I'll just get another dog the same as Eamon as my first guide dog, and I very quickly realised that Ron was as different from Eamon as it was possible to be. So, you know, it's that readapting, but, you know, if once you readapt and, you know, you know the dog knows you, if you work with the dog every day, you know, on your routes and things you want to do, the bond is just, for us, it was there within the first 2-3 months after we'd qualified, and we've never looked back. You know, I don't know what I would have done without him during lockdown in particular. You know, we've just carried on almost as normal. So yeah, great experience. 17 years now I've been a guide dog user, and I've loved every single second of it.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stuart. So just before I pass you over to Grant, just one last wee bit just on orientation and mobility. So it's just to kind of highlight, I think sometimes people come to us with you know, we get people right at the start of their sight loss journey, and then we get people much further along, all with different abilities and kind of related to their orientation and mobility. So the assessment, rehab and mobility training is the responsibility of the local authorities. When we are chatting to people who are applying for our services through our person-centred conversations, it might highlight that there is a need for cane training. And if someone hasn't had cane training before, we would refer them back to their local authority. If it's somebody who has had cane training in the past, and maybe they've had a guide dog for a number of years and they're applying for another one and just need a wee short refresher, that might be something that we can do. But the general bulk of the new, you know, if it's a new learning on cane training, it would be the local authority. Our orientation and mobility specialists can provide adaptations for the home, so they might be able to provide liquid level indicators or the tactile markers, and can sort of point in the direction of information and advice, which Grant's going to take us on to next, and also our assistive technology. I think having the long cane skills is a real benefit when when applying for a guide dog. It's a nice backup for when, for example, if the dog's not well and can't work for a few days, or if you're going somewhere where it's just not appropriate to take the dog, like if you're going on holiday abroad, or if you were going to like a really loud concert or something where you just didn't want to take the dog, definitely having that, the cane training is a handy thing to have in your repertoire. Grant, is there anything you want to chip in about orientation and mobility just now before we move on?
Yeah, I suppose it's important to remember that, like the point Emma made earlier about, you know, the guide dog can walk in straight lines, can navigate around obstacles, and can stop at junctions and stairs and things, but the guide dog owner has to have an awareness of their environment. So that's your ability to orientate, ability to know where you are. So our orientation mobility specialists will be one of the people you meet early on in your application process, who will do come out, you know, we'll discuss things on the phone, we'll come out and meet you, we'll do that kind of assessment about what your orientation is like, how much you know your local environment, and also if you've got the kind of demands for an advanced mobility aid like a guide dog. So the sort of, you can be orientated and know your environment, but you might not necessarily, you know, so the cane skills is, the cane gives you information about your environment and keeps you safe from hazards and things, and can also, so that's a mobility skill, but it can also give you information about being orientated. But sometimes you may think, oh, I've not got very good cane skills. That's not always necessarily relevant. It's about how you move around and how you know the environment, and are you familiar with where you're going? Because if you don't know the environment and you get lost, you know, like Stuart said, the dog's not going to know how to get you back. So our orientation mobility specialists, like I mentioned earlier, are what we call or qualify as rehabilitation workers with a foundation degree, and we have them throughout the UK and all our sites. And so for them to assess you and know those skills, but also, like Emma said, maybe topping some of them up and maybe working with that could be a small amount of work. But if you haven't got any of those skills, then obviously it's the local authority, but it's the same qualified professional that you'll meet that works for the local authority that works for us. They just employed by different people, but it's the same role. And then for anyone under the age of 18, if you were applying for a guide dog, you'd meet one of our habilitation specialists. And throughout the country, we sometimes work for the local authority on their behalf. So if you were under 18 and applying, you may well get some work with us, with us habilitation specialists, or again, it might be the local authority. So it sort of depends on where you live for that part. But and then again, like Emma talked about, some of those what we call quick wins. If we come to, or the OMSPs, I should say, orientation mobility specialists, or OMSPs, or come and see you, there may be some of those quick wins that we can help you with around the home, whether that be like the liquid level indicator for making drinks, or marking up your appliances, or something that, you know, that they can help with too, because they're qualified rehabilitation workers. So it's working in partnership really with local services that they would do to ensure everything too. I think, yeah, that's about it.
So I'll just I'll let you carry on, Grant. So we're just going to move on to our website and the information available there.
Yeah, I'm just, because of my low vision, I'm going to turn my camera off now because the stuff I can see is over there. So bear with me one moment. You don't really, if you can see the screen, you really don't want to see the side of my head. So yes, the information and advice parts of our website. So moving on to the kind of technology side of things, we mentioned before that a lot of the services we do, we're now supporting virtually, and we can meet people either kind of one-to-one or in group settings, if that's during the assessment process, or if it's, you know, applying for a companion or body dog, or my time to play, or there's lots of ways that you might meet in a group virtually with us. Or, as I mentioned before, the orientation mobility specialist or the habilitation specialist may meet you early on virtually. But what we found through a lot of our research was that, as with any person, if you want to find something out or you need support, people go online. You know, many people, not everyone, but often people turn to Dr. Google or go to Siri and say, how do I find this information? So before COVID, we did have a range of information on our website, but what we wanted to do is try and make that, what's the right word, really more varied, in that we had a lot of information about guide dogs. We had stuff, tutorial videos on My Sighted Guide and other things on volunteering and things. But the life skills parts of things we were looking at on our CYP services. We just wanted to build on that and make sure that, again, Emma talked about being person-centered, that we were covering every aspect of a person's life. So what we've done over the past 14 months, we added on to the things that already existed there, but we also added a load of new pages. So if you wanted to find these pages, it's www.guideddogs.org.uk/getting-support/information-and-advice. Bit of a mouthful. But some of the new pages is we've got technology pages. We've enhanced them, so we've got things on iOS accessibility. We've got a whole, as I'll talk about in a minute, a series of webinars. But we also added some life skills pages, and in the life skills pages we've got information and advice on how to use your functional vision. That might be around using lighting or color contrast, or visual strategies, low vision aids. We refer to other organisations as well in there. We've also looked at orientation and mobility. So there's information in there I mentioned previously about sighted guiding techniques, but we've also looked at searching for obstacles you may have dropped, or refresher information around orientation and mobility. And we've also got independent living skills, which we've divided into independent living skills for personal care. So anything about your day-to-day activities, and everything from makeup and shaving to clothing care and things like that. And then we've got independent living skills around the home. So that could be everything from identifying products in your kitchen to housework, entertainment, the whole range. So from the moment you get up in the morning to when you go to bed at night, what sort of activities are you doing, to maintain your independence? And we've given information and advice. We've got the printed word, we've got some videos, and again, like I say, we link to other organisations who perhaps have got more specialist information about equipment and other services. We've also got family support, education support on there, getting out and about with your guide dog, information on my time to play. So we just added a whole wealth of information, and it's continually growing and continually evolving. And we research to see which pages are being looked at and which aren't, and if the ones that they aren't, we need to change them or update them. So it's a continually changing process. So again, if you've got any feedback on those pages or anything you'd like to see, let us know. Can we move on to the next slide, please? So the next slide is titled Assistive Technology. So the fun bit. So if we at Guide Dogs, as we say, we've got a whole variety of staff that you may meet, whether they be that My Sighted Guide volunteers or My Guide managers who manage the service, or habilitation specialists, orientation mobility specialists, and our guide dog mobility specialists, who are the people who match with dogs. So what we want to make sure we do with assistive technology, or mainstream technology for that matter, is introduce it at the right time for the right person. And we want to make sure that it's not a replacement for core skills, but also it can really complement things, as we know. Technology, apps, equipment, all that kind of stuff can really enhance independence where perhaps there isn't another solution. Not everyone's as keen with technology as others, so it's about introducing the right, like I say, the right equipment at the right time. And certainly as we find with CYP, that can really enhance things for development, whether that be with the little ones with visual stimulation or tracking. It could be with cause and effect. It could be those early games and activities to get young people moving, all the way through to apps and wearables and equipment that we may work with. If we can move on to the next one, please, Emma. So, as I mentioned, I mentioned that we've got a technology page on the information advice website. But last summer we launched a whole range of webinars with Martin and Ralph at the time, led on a whole series of webinars, again to enhance people's independence and give people the information they may need. There's a whole series of different topics, including independent living skills, how to use smart home technology, mobility technology, getting out and about, the technology for children and young people, how to set up an Alexa device, and introduce the Guide Dogs Alexa skill, which I'll talk about in a moment. Guide Dog partnerships and using technology. Now, there's a lot more topics in there as well, so if you go to the website and check them out, they're available on demand. And there may be a plan for more webinars in the future, or collaborations like this. As I mentioned previously on the technology pages of the information advice sections. We've got a range of videos as well for we've focused on iOS accessibility first, so some videos about how to get going with your iPhone and how to use the accessibility features, whether that be using the screen reader, that's VoiceOver, or using magnification, zoom magnification for iOS, or using the other accessibility features within the phone. So they're really great. Again, please check them out, and if you've got any feedback or anything you think you'd like to see added, again, please let us know.
Grant, I'll pop some of these links in the chat just because it's maybe easier to get to, so I can do that while you're chatting.
Amazing, because me trying to read that next one out might take the rest of this whole session. So, well, like I say, there is a webinar on this, but the next slide is titled Alexa Skills, and it got a bit smaller there. So if you've got an Alexa, so a smart home, a smart speaker, I should say, so one of those virtual assistants, the Amazon version, your Alexa, we've developed a skill. Now the skill at the moment is fundamentally for guide dog owners or people applying for guide dogs. We're going to develop that in the future for our other services, but at the moment it's about information to raise people's awareness about what it's like to be a guide dog owner and the other things involved. So to launch that, you quite simply say, Alexa, open guide dogs. Well, my lady's not pinging off at the moment because she's downstairs, but I have used it extensively and it's a really great skill. The rest of the slide reads, our customers can ask Alexa for advice on working with and caring for their guide dog. Topics such as toileting, travel, behaviour and training. For a demo, check out our webinar on Alexa. So there's loads more on there as well about food, about the application process. It's really great. I talked a little bit about, and I'm going to come back to some apps and stuff in a minute before we move on, and some of the equipment we have introduced, but also there's fundamentally we're an organisation that support people's independence, or to be as independent as they choose. We want people to live actively, independently and well, but there's certain things we acknowledge that perhaps isn't our responsibility to help people with technology. So if people are trying to get online for the first time, or they have other needs, perhaps learning to say word processing or search the internet or certain things like that, that perhaps isn't for a mobility specialist or one of our teams. We worked in partnership with the RNIB, and they've got a service, the RNIB Tech for Life team, Technology for Lifetime, and we've got a referral process. If people come to us and we acknowledge that perhaps they need more in-depth support with technology, we can refer on, but people can go to RNIB directly as well. So they've got a fabulous network throughout the UK of Technology for Life volunteers and staff. So I'd encourage you, if you're at the early stages of using technology, or you need support, or know someone that needs support, that link with the RNIB as well. Some of those skills we may teach as well, and like I say, we've got an education support service, CYP, children and young people technology service, and family support. So that maybe that we can link in with those, but I think we acknowledge that sometimes we're not the professional that's placed to do certain tasks. So it's about working in partnership. And kind of linking on to that, I mentioned earlier about any apps and equipment that might help people to be as independent as possible. We've worked over the years and continue to do so to partner with other organisations. Some of you may know of the iOS, that is the Apple app Soundscape. Now that was developed a good few years ago in collaboration with guide dogs, and some of our staff worked with and for, in fact, Microsoft for a good few years. Chris Yates is one of our orientation mobility specialists, who is also now an app developer and has worked closely with them. And so that was a fabulous app and a fabulous collaboration. Again, there's more information on our website. More recently, we've tried to work with some of the other developers of apps that can support people. I would encourage you to check out Clue. That's CLEW. That's an indoor navigation app. So if you're indoors, and it uses the camera of your phone. So if you don't have coverage, or it's a route that perhaps that you travel either once off or regularly, the app's designed so if it's somewhere that's perhaps easy to get to, or you're using sighted assistance to get to but harder to get back, so maybe going to the bathroom, or a chair in a restaurant, or a place in a lecture theatre, or a desk, an open plan desk in an open plan office, you may find it simple to get there but more difficult to get back to that. So that they're fabulous. We've also are working with Lazarillo. So that's a great app for navigation, Lazarillo. Those guys are fabulous in that they are on iOS and Android. So again, if you need, that can give you travel information about what's in your environment, finding bus stops. I really like it. So we continue to try and work on those partnerships. And for those people perhaps who don't want to use a smartphone, there's the equipment and wearables like the Victor Reader Trek, which people may remember was called the Trekker Breeze. It's now called the Victor Reader Trek, and it's an external device, a GPS device by Humanware. So again, we've chatted and collaborated with those guys about how to introduce that to people. So you may still use a smartphone, but travel apps and all that other stuff can drain your battery. So maybe use an external device. I know the guys here at Sight and Sound collaborated with Sunuband. So again, is that the right piece of equipment for someone? It's a wearable, you wear like a watch, and it can detect obstacles and hazards. It links with an app, again, a navigation app. And then the other more perhaps advanced pieces of kit that, like smart canes and things like that. So it's just, working together with our organizations to ensure that, that's the right piece of kit at the right time. So those are all really mobility-driven pieces of equipment, but and applications. But working with people like the RNIB and Cobalt and other providers for daily living activities and daily living equipment. So, and as we all know, technology and equipment's ever evolving and ever changing. So it's trying to keep up to date with that, and and again, that collaboration is really important for us. Also worthwhile. Sorry, I didn't mention. Gavin Neat from the organization Neatbox. So he's got two apps, the Welcome app and the Button app, which Welcome's a really great app that you can sign up for, and you can get customer service support, and you can let services know that you're coming and what your individual needs are. And the Button works and interacts with weight boxes at Green Men and automatic doors for services that have signed up for that. So I'd really encourage you to check out Welcome by Neatbox and Button by Neatbox. Gavin was one of our, used to be a guide on mobility specialist, but has set up his own company. And we've done a little bit of chat with Blind Square as well. Now that's a paid for app and it's only on iOS, but again, that's a pretty detailed navigation app. And they're working on some innovations at the moment about making their app communicate with things like lifts and elevators. And so there's some really exciting stuff coming from Blind Square. But we've just had really kind of early chats with them. We haven't done too much detailed work, but again, it's just another choice. And I think now this slide reads some examples of technology in action. So apps, equipment, and communicating virtually. We've kind of covered a lot of that, but the picture on screen is a chap wearing a bone conduction headphones. That's another important piece of information to think about when using the right piece of equipment at the right time. We talked about developing those core skills first, but we often think it's really important that we have the information from our environment. So bone conduction headphones that sit on your cheekbone, and so therefore that still allows you to hear what's going on around you whilst also hearing the information from your device. So yeah, that's really key.
Stuart, did you mention earlier that you use the bone conducting headphones?
I did. I use them every day actually with Soundscape, which Grant mentioned earlier, and I actually had the opportunity as part of a work I did with Guide Dogs and Seascape to beta test Soundscape, didn't I, Grant, in the very early stages? And as I was saying earlier before we came on air, it was a wonderful experience, to have the chance to test something that really, because it was a 3D audio map, if you like, with the headphones on, it was something I had never really experienced before. So the opportunity to actually have the chance to test that app with bone conducting headphones, and then feedback to Microsoft and Guide Dogs was, it really was a privilege, and it was as I say, a great experience, and it's evolved so much from those early stages. And I do use a Victor Reader Trek as well, and again, it's the either the bone conducting headphones, or I don't know if does anybody use the Bose frames as well, Grant?
Yeah.
They're really good as well.
Yep. That's right, Stuart. I'd like it was a great opportunity for us to pilot that app before it went live to the public, and Stuart and among others would give us some really valuable information that helped it, Microsoft, to evolve and develop that app. But yeah, absolutely, the Bose frames were ultimately are a pair of sunglasses, right, with a speaker in the leg, which can give you information that way as well, which can be slightly more, maybe more comfortable, but also a little bit more subtle when you're wearing them, rather than the bone conduction headphones sometimes can get in the way a little, I think, around the back of the neck if you're wearing, certainly up here in Scotland in the summer when it's raining, you've got your coat on and everything. So it's another nice choice. I think also we chatted a sort of maybe beforehand as well about the different things, before we came on here, about the different things people use. And a lot of the things I listed there before are what we talk about assistive technology, things specifically designed for people with a visual impairment. But there's a whole host of services and apps that we can adopt that are, say, mainstream. Everything from something like UK Bus Checker, which can tell you bus times before you leave and actually track you when you're on the bus, telling you what bus stop's coming next, to Move It, MOOVIT. Again, that's a journey planner, and you can tell you about routes and what public transport to take and all that. From anything as simple as national rail inquiries or travel line or anything like that. So it's about, Google Maps or Apple Maps can work sometimes. It's quite driven visually, but some people get real benefit from that. You can add your own points of interest and things. So it's sort of just making sure that people have got, that's why we're sort of developing information, really, so there's a well-rounded choice. Some things suit some people better than others. So I think, yeah, it's making sure that we've got, everyone's well informed about what's out there and what works best for them. What have we got next, Emma?
Yes, I think we're on to the very exciting Tech for All. So I pretty excited to sort of share with you our new pilot that we've got coming very soon for children with sight loss, and it's for children specifically aged 3 to 18. So it is a pilot, and we do have limited stocks, but we're able to offer iPads or iPhones to children in that age range for free, so free of charge to the family. And it's for use outside of school, so to allow the child just to explore and play games, and just to learn to be more independent with technology at home. So any child in that 3 to 18 could apply for an iPad, and our older age range there, so the 11 to 18-year-olds, could opt for an iPhone instead. And if they opt for the iPhone, they could get a data package and a shock absorbent case as well. So when they're applying, the families can apply on our website. So it's guidedogs.org.uk/tech4all. So it's not launched yet, it is coming soon, but when it launches, the application form will be on that web page, and families just need to show proof of visual impairment for the child. So it might be a letter from a consultant or ophthalmologist, or in other parts of the UK, it might be a certificate of visual impairment. So a really, really great offer. So I would encourage you to share that with anyone you know that could benefit from it, and point them towards our website so that they're aware when it launches. It'll be on our social media channels and things as well. But yeah, really, really nice offer there. And as well, I guess, for any children who might need more specific equipment, we also offer grants as well for technology, where families can apply for a specific piece of equipment and get some advice on what might best suit their child, and then sort of go through our grant scheme. And that's for technology and for sensory equipment as well. So lots available there for children with sight loss to help them with their technology at home. So just our kind of final slide really is just, we've mentioned our centralised phone number a few times. So if anyone's interested in any of our services, and whether that's somebody with sight loss or their family inquiring, or a professional, they can phone our general phone number called Guideline. I can put the number in the chat as well. We've also got an email address, which is information@guidedogs.org.uk, and we've got our website, which, as Grant's kind of talked us through, there's lots of information on. So even if people didn't necessarily want to apply for our services, they could go onto our website and just see if there's anything there that might provide some tips and things that could help. We do also have a PSL sign video on our website too, and we'll accept referrals from people with sight loss or professionals working in the field. So that's us towards the end of our presentation. I'm going to stop the sharing, and then you might get the get our lovely faces a bit bigger on your screen. So I think there was one or two questions in the chat. So I saw one from Jane. So Stuart, this one's for you. It says, it would be good to hear from Stuart about how he felt about having the dog at school.
Some inside information that someone knows already.
Yes, that's an interesting one. So the first guide dog I had, I think I was one of the first in Scotland to actually have a guide dog at high school, and I was in 6th year when I first got my first guide dog, and we're both very young. You know, I was 18, and poor Raymond, you know, he was only a year and a half. So it was a lot to contend with. I think I actually, and I'm just going to have to be honest, I found it quite difficult because the teachers had no experience of, you know, guide dogs, and you know that there was a bit of, you know, even though I'd been through the training, you know, that sometimes the teachers were a wee bit unsure if I was doing the right things, and you know, the kids were, you know, even though everything had been put in place beforehand, you know, there had been a lecture from someone at Guide Dogs to everybody in Lochgelly High School. There was repeated messages: you leave the dog alone, you don't go near the dog, and the kids just they couldn't do it. You know, it was so. There wasn't a lot of work done in the school with the guide dog. You know, even if I left a class early, there was, you know, there was still you know, issues. So I found that if you asked me would I do it again, I would probably say no. I don't think I would do it in school again, but I do know of other people in Fife. I think, and Grant will know about this more than me, but I think there was a person at I think it was about 14, 15 in Fife who had a guide dog at school. You know, this was a wee bit after me, and he had a great experience, apparently. So at Songdown, and I think there are, in some cases, people still taking guide dogs into schools. But for me, I found it much easier when I left Lochgelly High School. I went to, well, it was Lauder College in Dunfermline at the time. It's now Fife College. It was just such an easier experience because they were a bit more, it was more adult based. And they actually listened to me as soon as I went in there and said, look, don't feed the guide dog, just leave him alone, you know, and if you want to pet him, could you please just come up and ask me? Everybody at Fife College and at Napier University actually respected that, where they didn't at school. So as I say, sorry, it sounds a wee bit of a negative experience, but that was my experience anyway.
Okay, I don't know that it's negative. It's like you say, Stuart, it's realistic, isn't it?
That's the word. It's realistic. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, like Emma mentioned earlier, that there's no lower age limit to apply for a guide dog, but it's also important to remember that we've got an advanced mobility that has a work demand as well. So we expect people to have a good few routes that they would work that dog with, and actually in school, between classes, they're not doing very much. So you need that. It needs to be challenged as well. So you've got maybe
stimulated
at lunchtime. You've got to take it out. Yeah, it can be a lot to do, or walk to school and stuff.
And that's, you know, he was getting his walk in the morning, but then, you know, down to, you know, we got the bus down to the school, etc. But, you know, it was a very, very skittish dog as well. And, you know, and then he was I just felt so bad for him because he was lying around a lot during the day and classes, as Grant says. And you know, the routes weren't very, very stimulating because, you know, you're trying to do you really spend a lot of time in school. Obviously during the day as well. So as I say, that's just my realistic experience, but I do know it does work. It does work well in certain. It all depends on the pupil and the dog, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the environment. You know, that not having a lot of stimulation during the day is true of someone that's at work or college. You know, it's a similar experience. But like Stuart said, you're in a high school with other young people, and you know, young people, we can't, you know, we can't predict what's going to happen. But you know, whether people try and feed or try and do the things that we're not asking them to or whatever. But that's true of any environment. But you know, it's less common for young people in school to get a guide dog, but you know, it still does happen because, again, depending on any person of any age, depends on the workload, depends on the challenge, depends on the need. So I think, like you say, it can be positive, or it and also the timing, as Emma talked about earlier, like the amount it takes to learn to become that partnership. When you go on class, you go to learn, and it takes, you know, weeks and weeks and weeks of work. So that can only really happen for someone in school, really in the school holidays. So that timing, finding the right dog.
Yeah.
So
I mean, now that I've worked at Seascape for 8 years, and I know it's totally different, and it wasn't the question, but that's been such a great experience, you know, because we're office based, we have our own office, and it's actually great to have Ron with me, because there's sometimes, and I know everybody is at work will feel the same. It's sometimes if you're having a particularly bad day at the office or something like that, you know, you just want to get out at lunchtime, and that's where, you know, he comes into his own. You know, he's actually, you know, getting out at lunchtime, and we're going at least a 30-40 minute, you know, walk / you know, giving Ron a good free run up the local woods, and I think that actually helps me as much as him, just to, you know, unwind and you know, refocus. And I could tell you, if I was using a cane, I probably just wouldn't leave the office. But again, it's all personal experience, isn't it?
Definitely.
Jane's popped another wee comment in saying, thanks, Stuart, that's useful to know, and lessons to be learned.
Good.
Okay, and there's another question saying, so this is on the Tech for All offer. So can a child who has received an iPad some years ago for educational purpose apply for a Tech for All iPad or iPhone? I suppose there might be a few sort of factors that influence this. So if they only have their iPad at school, then they could apply for using one at home through Tech for All. The whole point of our Tech for All scheme is to supply iPads and iPhones to children who don't have access to one outside of school. So if they've already got access to one, they potentially wouldn't be eligible. But I would suggest that they get in touch anyway to clarify. Or what I'll do as well, I can leave my email address in the chat. And Aunt Jay, if you want to email me, I'll can kind of clarify the answer on that one and come back to you. So I'll pop that in the chat just now. If you want to drop me an email, I can find the answer out and come back to you.
And another example, I guess, might be that a young person has an iPad, but they're now getting older and they don't have access to a mobile phone, so that, you know, that could be an addition. Or there's an iPad in the house, but they don't have access to it all the time because it's shared between however many other people. So if we can get a device solely for them, but if they already have an iPad at home, it's about whether do they, you know, like Emma said, do they need another one? Or if it's in school and it can't leave school, then absolutely we can think about something for the home, because, you know, that Tech for All offer is all about giving people opportunity for learning, not only their independent stuff, but it could be socially, it could be all sorts of things that they're using that device for.
Perfect. And there was a question from Kazia about her guide dog. I've dropped you a personal message, Kazia, with my contact details. It might be better just to speak directly with your guide dog mobility specialist. Has anyone else got any other questions they'd like to put to any of the panel?
We've got Steve, who's very patiently had his hand raised.
Oh, I've not seen that. Sorry.
Session. No, it's okay. Steve, if you'd still like to voice your question, please feel free. Just need to unmute yourself, or if it's already been answered, you may not need to. But if you'd like to unmute yourself, Steve, if you're still with us. Possibly not. We'll let you come in anyway, Steve, when you're ready.
Maybe we answered it.
Yes, probably. There was so much in there that you covered. So yeah, thank you. Firstly, I mean that was fascinating. I had I had a very little to do this session, but it was fascinating to sit back and hear about the history of the charity. You know, the sort of the vast range of services and support that you offer. I mean, it really is. It's amazing. I mean, I'm a dog owner. I'm a dog lover. I'm obviously not a guide. I don't have a guide dog, but you know, just to sort of catch a glimpse of how, you know, the guide dog's journey and the user's journey as well. It really is amazing. Also, whoever developed the Flash video is you know, brilliant. It's a genius little snippet into sort of the that refers to the sort of puppy razors, doesn't it? The dog video on your website.
It's a really nice wee advert that we just released recently.
If anybody's not seen it, on the Guide Dogs website, there's a short video which features a little puppy called Flash who spends some time with a puppy raiser, and then obviously goes back to guide dogs for the formal training. And it's fantastic. It really is, captures sort of the essence of what those puppy raisers do, and I imagine, you know, it's a vital part of the guide dog's journey. So it's brilliant. Good. Sorry, my computer crashed, so I had to log off and log back on. So I've lost some of the chat box, but
there's another question in.
We've got a few more. Yeah, is that from John? Yeah. John, any traveling? Oh, travel. Yeah, any advice, I suppose, with traveling abroad with a guide dog from John?
So, Grant, I don't know if you're. It's been a long time since I've been asked about this one. Traveling abroad with guide dogs, so you can do it. So some of our dogs. I think if someone was going to travel regularly, the dogs would be trained to go on planes rather than just you tweaking it on. I think if you're going abroad, like a lot of guide dog owners would leave the dog at home if they were just going for a week's holiday. It's not, it's an awful lot of upheaval. I think you would need to look at like the pet passport. Grant, I don't know if you know an awful lot about this.
That's absolutely right. You've covered it in that, you know, if it's a one-off journey, then perhaps maybe the guide dog gets a holiday as well and gets to go and stay with someone else. If that's okay, if you need that, your primary mobility aid and you're going by yourself, is absolutely fine. If it's a regular thing, like Emma said, there might need to be a little bit of adaptive training for airports and planes and stuff like that. But you know, and obviously a pet passport. But if in doubt, contact the organisation and, you know, can speak to a guide dog mobility specialist, and they can give you the kind of advice you need, because again, like Stuart said earlier, everything's quite personal. It sort of depends on where you're going, how often you're going, what the environment might be like when you're there. You know, if you're going to somewhere I don't know, like Venice, it's quite a challenging environment to walk around. Never mind walking around with a dog. So just kind of thinking about all those things, that what would the experience like be for both of you, and you know, is it essential, and do you need to take them? Oh, absolutely. If you think, well, actually I could manage with, I'm going with a partner or a friend, or let's just because you have to take a working dog with you to a hotel and spending and all that, those additional things.
Like the laws, so in the UK we've got really good law. We've got the Equality Act, which allows access for guide dog owners to lots of places, whereas other countries, you know, laws will be different in different countries as well. So definitely be doing your research before you went. You wouldn't want to do all that and get there and then not be allowed in places.
It is an interesting question. I mean, as I say, with Ron, I'm so pathetic. I won't go abroad. I haven't been abroad. I think I've been abroad once in maybe 8 years from when I got Ron, and it was kind of, I reluctantly went because it was a 3-day work conference in Norway, and I didn't take Ron, and the reason being is I had someone going with me, and if Ron was to go over to Norway, coming back to that crucial point, he's no idea where he is anyway. So I'd be depending on someone guiding me. We've no idea where we are. I'd be depending on guidance, sighted guide everywhere, basically. So, you know, what would Ron's purpose be there other than you know, to keep me company. So I thought that's rather not selfish, but I thought, you know, that there is no point in this. So Ron just stayed with my mum for the 3 days. He got a 3-day holiday, which he was ecstatic about. And I went to Norway on my own for 3 days. So apart from, you know, I didn't want the separation, but it had to be done. So apart from that, we just stay put together in the UK.
Also, just to add to that, without pushing the website too much, we do have pages on the Guide Dog website about traveling with your guide dog, and it's on the information and advice pages, and it's titled "Traveling with Your Assistance Dog," and it's got information about all forms of transport there, by bus, by boat, by air, by car, by rail, by air, by water, and by bus or coach. So there'll be some more stuff in there. There is more things in there, like traveling by air, about what you might want to consider, information on the International Guide Dog Federation, and lots more stuff. So that might help too.
Thanks, Grant.
Excellent. Thank you. I think, well, we just had one more come in from Bilal. Hello. Silly question, no such thing. Do we know when a guide dog is retiring? And is there something to look out for? Is there a set age? And in terms of matching, are we able to decide on what genders we would prefer? And also, it'd be good to hear from Grant again. Obviously as a former mobility instructor. So retirement age, sort of signs or early signs of retirement, and matching sort of gender.
Good questions. Not silly questions at all. I think they're very good questions. As the dog is getting older, the guide dog mobility specialists, they are keeping in touch with the guide dog owner, and as the dog's getting a bit older, they're discussing how the dog's working. So it might be that the dog is showing signs of slowing down. It's maybe not keeping up. So it's maybe not walking at the same pace, and the guide dog owner's finding their journeys are a bit slower than they'd like them to be. Or it might be that as the dog's, sort of approaching that sort of 9-year-old age, they might not be slowing down and they might be quite happy. It's quite a kind of individual thing for the guide dog partnership. So it might be that dogs that have got a lower workload, so maybe somebody who is matched to a dog that's matched to an older person, and maybe just does quite local routes, might be able to work a wee bit longer than a dog who is in London every day and really high volumes of workload. They might retire a wee bit earlier. So it is very specific. Definitely just something for the guide dog owner to be discussing with their guide dog mobility specialist as the dog's getting a bit older. And obviously the dogs have health checks as well with the vets, so it might be that something's flagged up there that sort of influences when the dog retires. Grant, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on dog retirement.
Yeah, you covered a lot of it. I think, as you mentioned earlier, I think it's about 18 months, 2 years old, the dog starts its working life, and on average they'll work till about 10 really, or older sometimes, but around 9, that's the point where the guide dog mobility specialist will be in regular contact just with those check-ins to see how the health's going to go in. But like with everything, it sort of varies on the dog. If there's any health issues, if they're still working well, then that can continue. But it's really individual, and it really varies from match to match, really, how long that goes on for.
Yeah, I mean, as a guide dog owner, I hope people don't mind me coming in with my own views. I know they're very personal views, but as a guide dog owner, this is one of the hardest things. It really is for me one of the hardest parts of being a guide dog owner, is this, whole retirement thing. So, as I say, with my first guide dog, he was still 10, and he was actually 10 and a half, and my instructor at the time, because he wasn't slowing down, he was just, you'd think he was about 2 years old the way he was working. And so we just kept putting the retirement off. I wasn't on the waiting list for a new dog because he knew, my instructor knew how hard the transition was going to be. So kept putting it off, and all of a sudden, poor Eamon actually just came on all of a sudden. He took severe bone cancer, and that's where I then realised, oh no, I've kept this dog going, not too long, but this was unforeseen. But then I was without a dog. I was very lucky. I was only without a dog for a matter of 2 or 3, 4 months, but it was the worst 2 or 3 months, 3, 4 months I went through in many, many years, shall I say. So Ron is now 9, and what I've reluctantly did, I've reluctantly done it. I got a phone call, as Emma and Grant said, from a GDMI, a guide dog mobility instructor, and we went through a lengthy conversation, and I'm now on the waiting list for a new dog. So, I mean, a new guide dog could come. Probably, I might get a phone call today saying, we've actually got a match for you here, Stuart. Do you want to take it? And I think I would take it, even though I do think Ron still has another good 1 or 2 years left in him. I know he's not going to go on forever. So, when a new guide dog comes along, as I said to the instructor, so be it. I'll make the change. But I haven't heard anything yet. So Ron and I are quite happily, going about our daily work.
Good old Ronald.
It's a bit like guide dog blind date, isn't it?
It's a wee,
I mean,
yeah.
that phone call, whoever makes that phone call, it must be a amazing feeling to be able to call someone and say, look, we've got a match, and they're gonna be with you next week or whatever it might be. It's amazing, it really is.
Incredible professional, yeah, absolutely.
Takes us nicely onto there's a second part to the question there about, in terms of matching, are we able to decide on what genders we would prefer? So I suppose we mentioned earlier, there's lots of things that we have to consider with the match, whether, like the kind of walking speed and the lifestyle and how the dog's going to fit in with work or in different things, or travel, if it is someone that's using planes. So there's a lot of musts that we have to look at in the match, but then people can put in their preferences, if there's a specific breed or specific gender or even colour, if you've got some residual vision and you might see a yellow dog a bit more than you see the black dog. However, I guess the more you specify, so it's just something like I'd prefer a female dog without too much passion behind it, you're kind of limiting those matches that come up if you're specifying a female dog and effectively halving the potential matches that are coming up. So I guess it's just how strongly someone feels about having to, wanting to specify certain things, really.
It's a really interesting point, because again, I was so desperate for my second dog, and even the first guy, I was just so desperate for a dog. And the filling on the paperwork during the assessment, and I was asked this very question, right? Would you like a certain type of dog, breed of dog, colour, gender, that sort of thing? And I just said, just get me a match. I don't care if it's a German Shepherd, if it's a lab, if it's male, female, black, yellow. And because if I had specified too much, then as Emma said, I might have to wait a lot longer until they find that the right dog with all of these specifications, let alone the walking speed and the workload the dog would have to, contend with. So I always say, and I'll continue to say for however many guide dogs I have, as long as the dog is, a good worker and, wants to work every day, just give me that dog.
Thanks, Stuart. Another wee question here as well. How much should a dog work on average per day in terms of hours without it being worn out, or is there no such thing? So we do have a kind of, I suppose we've more got like a minimum requirement, because the dogs, when they're matched, they're young dogs and they need exercise, and they also need to be worked a certain amount to maintain their skills. So if we were only using the dog once a week, they might not maintain the standard of training that they have when they arrive. So I'm sure, Grant, you might know, I'm sure you have to work the dog a minimum of 40 minutes, 5 days a week. So that's the kind of minimum that we'd expect from a guide dog owner. I'm not aware that there is a maximum. I think that's something that through the assessment process you'd be discussing with the orientation and mobility specialist and the guide dog mobility specialist. You'd be talking to them about your daily routine, and that would be part of the matching process. So I guess if you've got quite a high daily level of workload, then they'd maybe be looking for a dog that's got that high energy to keep up with you. I think everyone will have everyone will have days where, you know, like, I don't know if you've got a week off and you go away for the day and you're maybe walking a bit more than normal. So there will be times where you walk more than you usually do. But no, not aware of a maximum. And I think it's just something that would be, you know, individual to each person, and we try and find the right dog that would keep up with you for super fit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually, I'm not sure if it was covered. I do apologise. I had to take a phone call at one point there, but during the presentation. But one thing that's key as well, you know, how Emma, you're saying about the workload and keeping up the skills, that is key. And even with the training side, you know, sometimes they're like difficult children, guide dogs as well, because when Ron, well, not Ron too much, but Eamon especially, even Ron now, you know, he'll stop and he'll try and have the odd cheeky sniff. Or Eamon, he used to think, you know, oh, I am the best guide dog in the world. I don't need to stop at this curb. I'm just going to walk over at the curb into the middle of the road without stopping. And, you know, to start with, I thought, oh, it's only a wee mistake. I'll just let him away with it. No, you know, you have to follow the training to the letter, because if you let them away with something, you know, something once, they'll think they can do it again. So, you know, again, anything like it's to maintain that standard of training that the instructor has, you know, painstakingly went through at the very start of your 5-week training, is essential. And that does sound a bit swotty, but, you know, as a guide dog owner for 17 years, trust me, it really is key to do that as well.
Absolutely. And I think, as Emma said, that might depending on, say, you live in the central part of London, or you live and travel around the Highlands and Islands, that will kind of influence the kind of dog and the energy levels it has. So it might be that if you've got that high workload all the time, then they'll look at that, and those dogs, even in their early training, try and identify them. Or, you know, if ones are more suited to travel on boats and planes than are, you know, urban environments and things. So that's probably more what it will dictate how much it can work as well per day. But if it, you know, like any dog, if it's a once in a while, then it will cope and get a bit tired and recover. But if it was a regular thing, then and like Stuart mentioned earlier, you know, he was at school and then he changed him to college and he changed him to university. That'll all be monitored as well, because can that dog that he was matched with cope with that different environment and stuff? So it's just kind of keeping us informed as well. If your lifestyle changes and, you know, those demands are different, just let us know.
Right. Well, thank you. I mean, speaking of unruly children, Stuart, I wonder if we can put my stepdaughter through like the guide dog training. Just I think she'd benefit. But no, I totally understand what you mean. Yeah, I've got sorry, go on, Grant. Yeah.
I was going to say, sorry, I completely overlooked earlier when I was talking about collaborations. I know that you guys have been, because with our technology service, which again I didn't mention, but I'm part-time seconded in our technology team at the moment, that you guys have collaborated with. It was Martin before, and helped upskill and inform a lot of our staff on training events. So I forgot to mention that, which was really valuable. And, you know, as it's recorded, moving forward, if there's anything we can do to work on, I know you guys you work with Suband and Vision and those kind of things. So if there's anything we could learn from you guys or work together with, that would be awesome.
Absolutely, yeah, we'd love to. I know that Tony Shrub, who you may know, Grant, but yeah, one of our sort of trainers, Tony, has done a lot of work with you guys, and we'd be pleased to work with you. Yeah, moving forward. Good. Excellent. Well, we are coming towards 11:30 now, and thank you to everybody who's hung on. I know lots of people have to leave and go back to work and do various things, but yeah, we have covered everything. We've covered everything in the chat box, and so thanks so much, Grant and Emma. I mean, you've earned your money today. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting us on. It was really nice to be able to chat to people. I feel like it's you know, we've not been out face to face, so it's nice to be able to reach people through webinars.
Definitely.
And lovely to be here, you know, to reconnect with Stuart and to meet the other Stuart and Sam, because we've been, you know, avid followers of the webinars and the information you share, which is amazing. So to be part of it's been a real privilege. So thanks, guys.
Thanks so much. Yeah.
I did pop my email address in the chat, so if anyone's got any questions that they didn't want to ask, or if anyone's watching on demand and has some questions, then feel free to email me. It's emma.brown@guidedogs.org.uk. If it's anything, there's also the website as well, but love to hear from you.
And sorry, guys, it's just the other Stuart from Sight and Sound. I've just been listening away. It's been thoroughly engaging presentation, and thanks a million, Emma and Ron. Fantastic work. It's really interesting for me here in Ireland to hear what's going on in the UK. So thanks for coming along today.
Thank you, Stuart. And
I'm sorry for saying the other Stuart. You're as
it's quite okay. I am I always say he's the better looking one, so that's fine. Well, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that.
They've become quite a famous double act now. The two Stuarts.
We're going to release a Christmas single this year.
100%. We're going to have.
And it's good night from him. Eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have a series of merchandise on our website as well, guys. T-shirts, mugs, mouse mats. Good. Okay. Just a few little plugs before we finish and sign off. So Stuart, the other Stuart Lawler, who runs our regular webinar Wednesdays, and they fall on intermittent weeks. So the next webinar Wednesday will be next Wednesday, which is the 16th. 16th. And I know that you've got the team from Vispero, haven't you, Stuart?
We have indeed. And Eric, so they're coming to talk about new changes in JAWS, some new updates to JAWS, and Zoom Text and Fusion in the May updates, with some enhanced features. So it promises to be a good event next week, and it'll be on our social media. Or if you can't register or you need help, just drop us an email to sales@sightandsound.co.uk.
Excellent. Thank you. And then myself and Stuart B will be back on Thursday, the 24th, and we're going to be looking at screen readers again, but we're going to be looking at alternative screen readers. So we've looked at mainstream, we've looked at JAWS, other bits, so we're going to be looking at free some and built in, so which is always a bonus. Good. And this session has been recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel, Sight and Sound Technology YouTube channel. So please do share it with colleagues, friends, family members, anybody who may be interested and benefit from the fantastic presentation that we've seen today. So yes, thank you. Final thanks again to the team from Guide Dogs, Grant and Emma. We'll see you soon, I hope. Please do join us again. And thanks Stuart B as always.
No problem at all. And thanks to Guide Dogs, really interesting.
Yeah,
thank you very much for
inviting us. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
No problem. Cheers. All right, team. We'll see you all soon. Yep, stay safe and please do join us again for another session. It's great to have you all with us. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.